So Kamala Harris has actually been benefiting from some positive upward movement in her polling. The recent Emerson poll actually says that she's now overtaken not Bernie Sanders. Whoop, she wishes. She's now overtaken Elizabeth Warren in the polling because of her quote unquote standout performance, where basically she attacked Joe Biden on something she actually agrees with him on, which was really weird, but nonetheless benefited her. So there are now more people who are looking into Kamala. They think they like Kamala. Maybe that was their first time being introduced to her. So I think that it is our duty to educate people about Kamala. Because if you have kids, Kamala doesn't really like the idea of you wanting to make sure your kids have a quality education so they don't end up in jail one day or worse. But these aren't my words. I know people think I'm a little harsh on Kamala, but these aren't my words. These are her words.
I have friends like Eva Patterson. Okay, so I say with all love and warmth that part of the concern also for people who are progressive thinking and liberal-minded, or just progressive thinking in terms of just fix it, is that we all have these posters in our closet that is attached to a stick that we sometimes will card out when we're talking about criminal justice policy and those statistics that you first heard when we opened it up, incarceration, and we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere. Build more schools. We protest. Build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion. And it's this. I agree with that conceptually. But you have not addressed the reason I have 3 padlocks on my front door. So part of the discussion about reform of criminal justice policy has to be an acknowledgement that crime does occur, and especially when it is violent crime and serious crime, well, there should be a broad consensus that there should be serious and severe and swift consequence to crime.
Now, hold up, real quick. She said she has a fundamental problem with the idea that we should be investing in more education and less prison. But wasn't it also you who said...
I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, I'm confused too. Because she just said, you heard her, outlining the connection between high school truancies and perpetrators of crime is exactly what she used to justify arresting kids and parents for truancy. Oh, yeah. She literally just said that. Okay? So she says that there is no connection, or excuse me, she said we should be investing in prisons rather, or there's a problem with investing in education over prisons. That's what she said. Then she said there's a clear connection between truancy and being in prison. In other words, not going to school, not getting an education, and then eventually ending up in prison. There's a connection that her office had clearly established. In other words, the quantity and or quality of the education could have a direct effect on the necessity of private prisons to begin with. Those are her words. Now, You might think this was forever ago. Maybe this is when she was a DA and that was long. No. This was 2013. She was Attorney General when she made this speech at it was a Chicago. Oh man, I can't remember what kind of. It was like a Chicago conference where she went to go speak about being smart, quote unquote, on crime. But that was what, 6 years ago now? About 6 years ago, and her stance remained consistent until she became a senator because she wanted to boost her profile to run for president. That's the only reason that she became a senator. And it's clear. And her stances were made clear. It's become more and more evident, or at least it should have become more evident to everybody who's been paying attention at this point, that with all the contradictions in her statements, not only that she made at the beginning of her attorney general tenure, then through her senatorial run, and then she made certain statements at the beginning of her presidential run, where she said she wasn't going to do anything specific for Black people, and then she came up with the plan to try and win Black people over immediately after she won the debates. It's clear that she's going to say anything she can to justify whatever the powers that be say she needs to get done at the time. She's going to say, for example, as Attorney General, she was going to say whatever she could say to justify putting people in jail, whether it was kids need to be in school, so therefore if they're truant, no matter what the circumstances are, the parent's going to be jailed for it or the kid's going to be jailed for it. And then she'll simultaneously turn around and say, yeah, but school doesn't matter though. We need prisons. Okay. Kamala, it's weird. Once again, I think she has that Hillary Clinton syndrome where she forgets the internet exists. And we can just go to YouTube. It's not hard, bro. But what's even more interesting is that she absolutely fails to discuss the root causes of the prison industrial complex, of the whole idea behind the statement, we need to invest in more education and less incarceration. Let's talk about the fact that most school districts are funded by what? 93% of that funding comes from property taxes. So if you live in a wealthy school district, in other words, where the median income is wealthy, your schools are always going to be successful. If you live in a poor school district, your schools are unfortunately highly likely to always be on the border of failing, or at least being below average as far as your performance is concerned. And that's almost across the board, no matter what state or city you go to. So they need school funding, but you're justifying investing in prisons while simultaneously saying we shouldn't be investing more in school funding, when it's clear that the current structure does not benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the principals, makes their job difficult, makes the teachers' jobs difficult. They're not getting the correct materials, makes the students' job difficult when they're not getting the correct materials in order to learn. They're not getting the best teachers they can because other schools can afford to pay better for better teachers. But hey, let's invest in the private prisons. There's also a problem with that statement because Kamala obviously was an attorney general who took money from police unions. The private prison industry has always invested a hefty amount into California politics for politicians in general. In 2016 alone, the private prison industry invested $1.6 million into both parties. So just in case you thought it was limited to the Republican Party, not at all. They love Republicans and Democrats because both of them will put us in jail. Isn't that just nice? So, and then that's actually almost triple of what they invested, according to Oprah Secrets. It's almost triple of what they invested in 2014. And then it actually doubled what they invested in 2012 during that presidential election. So they're actually spending more and more to make sure we can stay in jail. And then we know that with statements like Kamala's, you always have to ask, okay, there's not a lot of logical coherency here. So why is her statement seem so inconsistent with conventional logic? Like, Oh, you come to find out, just like in the 94 crime bill, oh, that's right. These politicians are literally getting paid by lobbyists to put people in prison. That was what the crime bill did. It incentivized people to be put in prison. It incentivized states to be put in prison. It literally said, the more people you put in prison, the more money we'll give you. Here you go. That's the problem with statements like that. And like I said, the reason hers seemed so logically inconsistent was because she was also accepting money from people who participate in the prison industrial complex. That includes, once again, police unions. Think about it. Kamala now has evolved also, quote unquote, on marijuana. Supposedly. Let's not go back to the... Remember the Breakfast Club interview where she smoked weed that was apparently so good that she was listening to Snoop Dogg and Tupac before their albums had been made yet? Yeah. So she's evolved, quote unquote, on marijuana. However, her past stances on marijuana were a little bit, she refused to join other states. Whenever they were trying to take marijuana off of the DEA's most dangerous substances list. Why? Because keeping marijuana on that list, despite what we know about its medicinal purposes, despite what we know about other substances that are legal in comparison, and the damage they can do to one's body in comparison to marijuana, despite what we know about all that, which Kamala, I'm sure, knew, considering that she was in a medicinal state whenever she was Attorney General. Despite all that, she refused to join in taking it off the most dangerous drugs list. Why? Because Kamala was adamant about keeping prisons filled. Isn't that interesting? That everything about Kamala seems to always go back to putting people in jail. And nobody ever presses her on that. Did you hear any questions about this during the debate? Why did you all of a sudden switch from not supporting marijuana at all to now you support marijuana or the legalization of marijuana? Hasn't introduced any legislation on it, by the way, but she says she supports it. Why is nobody asking her these questions? Kamala is being thrown in front of you, and if it hasn't been made perfectly clear, she's just like Hillary. She's just like Hillary in so many ways, where she will lie to you straight to your face, switch her stance the moment you challenge her on it, and pretend like we don't know how to use DuckDuckGo, Google, or Bing. She tried to justify putting kids in prison. She tried to justify putting parents in prison. She tried to justify putting marijuana users in prison. She even, if you don't know, kept innocent people in prison multiple times. Despite federal judges ordering their release, she fought to keep them there on technicalities. She knows, she knew about the marijuana. She obviously knows about the fun. Like, think about it, bro. When Jerry Brown was governor, he had like a $720 million prison program that was going to move prisoners into private prisons. What? All that money on private prison, $720 million. What could that have done for the California public school system? But instead, politicians get paid off. And guess what Kamala did while she was Attorney General and she knew this was happening? She said not a word. Although she was sharply critiqued about it by multiple media sources, she refused to address it. I don't understand. Why are we even having a debate about whether or not Kamala is for the people? She's for the people. She's for putting people in prison. Let's be clear about that. What she said in that interview. Let's be very, very clear, okay? Let's be very, very clear about that. Well, let's be clear about that, Kamala. You're not for us. You literally are defending, knowing the how much money Our public school systems don't have. Knowing we have so many failing public school systems across the country, knowing that private prison industry is perfectly fine. They're all right. They got money for days. And then in 2013, you still had the nerve to say people who want to invest in education more than prison are insane. That doesn't make any sense. While simultaneously saying, just a couple of years before that, well, we want to make sure kids stay in school, which is why we're going to arrest their parents if they're truant, because we've seen a connection directly between not being in class and in other words, not getting an education, and not having opportunity, and being likely to be put in jail. So basically, like I said, she just comes up with excuse after excuse after excuse to put people in jail. That cannot be a president, and I feel like everybody should know. So please make sure you share this video, comment with your thoughts below, and always remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and on JustNForm.com. Also, you can make sure that you're subscribed to the channel by going to the subscribe button, pressing it, and hitting that notification bell to get all of our notifications. And of course, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon by supporting the show by donating as little as $1. You can click on the link in the description below for that. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance.